My name is Kyla and welcome back to the Infinite Library. So today I am going to go through a whole bunch of books that I am getting rid of. I recently did a big reshelving. You may have seen the video for that already, but whilst I was doing that, I took that as basically a good time for me to kind of review my collection and decide which things I really want to keep hold of. I already had like a small pile of books that were just kind of like ones I put aside to sort of get rid of, but whilst I was doing this, it was a good way to look at what exactly I had and what things I maybe don't need anymore. Whether it's books that I just don't like, whether it's duplicates, whether it's books that maybe I don't like this particular copy and I've got my eye on a better copy. So doing that, I managed to pick out about 30-ish or so books that I'm going to get rid of, and I'm going to go through them all now and why I'm getting rid of them. So just to mention as well, I did get rid of a few books throughout the year as well. I tend to be someone who I'll read something, and if it's not something for me, I will tend to get rid of them basically straight away afterwards. So I usually don't put them aside. So I've already gotten rid of a couple of books that you may have seen me reading throughout this year, and those are The Ex-Hex, Lesser Known Monsters, Children of Paradise, My Secret Affection, The Devotion of Suspect X. So those books I've already sort of passed on. Most of them are in really good condition, so I actually donated them to the library, but a lot of these books that you're seeing here today, they are books I've had for quite a while, and a lot of them were secondhand to begin with, so a lot of these books that you'll be seeing are ones that I'll probably just either be taken to a charity shop. If any are in good enough condition, I'll probably donate them to the library, and if there's, I think I've got like one or two special editions, and those ones I will look at selling just because they're special editions. But most of these books are not new books, to be honest. They're just books I've had for quite a while, and I think their time on my shelves is done, and I want them to go out and have someone else pick them up and hopefully find some joy in them, basically. So, to start it off, we have most of the books which are ones that I've read and I've just I don't want them anymore, whether it's because I don't like them, whether it's just because I'm kind of done with them. So, to start off, we have Thomas Harris's Hannibal Rising. I did finish the series this year, and I'm keeping the first 3 books in the series, but I did not like this one at all. It's a big chunky hardback. I think it's still in fairly good condition, to be honest, but I don't think it's one that a library would take, quite honestly. This was a second-hand book anyway that I got, so I'm probably just going to take this back to a charity shop, which is probably where I got it from anyway, and hopefully someone else will take it. Then we've got a book that I kind of ended up with. Someone came and visited and they kind of left this behind, but it's not really my kind of book. It is Mrs. Hemingway by Naomi Wood, and it's just like a historical story that talks about the women in Ernest Hemingway's life, and it's not really my kind of thing, and no one else I know wants it, so I think this is just gonna go to a charity shop, quite honestly. I then have a single manga volume. And the issue with this manga, I love this series, by the way. This is Vampire Game by Ju Dal, and it's a really old series. As you can tell, we've kind of got a little Tokyo Pop logo here, which is not a thing you see anymore. But the issue is, I like this series. I only ever found volume 10, and I'm probably not going to collect the whole series, to be honest. So there is no need for me to just have this random volume 10 on my shelves when, if I'm gonna reread it, you know, I'll find it online or I'll borrow it off my friend who has it all. So yeah, how I read this originally was that I borrowed this all of a friend who really liked it. Essentially, it is quite a fun story. It's a very old manga. I think it might be a manhwa actually, even though it says it's manga. But basically, it's about this princess called Ishtar, and this vampire sort of gets is trying to kill her, but he gets like stuck inside the body of a cat, basically. So they end up sort of reluctantly teaming up. It is very cute. Like, there you go, you can see him in like cat form. And I liked the characters a lot. There's kind of like a love triangle going on, I believe. I don't remember much about it, I'll be honest, because I read it a long time ago, but I really don't need to have a random volume 10 when I'm probably not going to collect this series. So I'm going to pass it on and hopefully someone else will want a random volume 10 of this series. Next one is actually one of my book club books. This is Phoenix Extravagant by Unhaul. This one is actually new. I've only read it once, so I can probably pass this on to the library. But I just wasn't crazy on this. I really wanted to love this because it's dragons, it's got a really cool magic system, and it's one of the first books I've ever read that has a non-binary protagonist. But I just didn't love the story, sadly. Like, I really, really wanted to, but I just didn't really click with it, and I found it quite boring. So I'm just not going to hold on to it because at the end of the day, I have better books. So it's going. I then have another manga, and this one I've only read once before, so it's actually still in really good condition, but it is Reindeer Boy by Cassandra Jean. I love Cassandra Jean's artwork. I found out about her because she does a lot of the artwork for Cassandra Clare, for a lot of her characters from the series, and I think this was maybe her debut, like her own manga series, but I think it only ever got the one volume, to be honest. I think she's doing other stuff now that might be something I'm more interested in, but I remember just reading this and being like, it was fine. I didn't love it. And honestly, looking at it now, like, I just don't think it's something I'm bothered about. So basically, from what I remember, it's about this girl who has a new transfer student, and there's these boys who all have like reindeer horns. I don't remember what the deal is, honestly, but yeah, they're all like got reindeer horns, and they all kind of fall for her, and it was cute, but it just wasn't particularly memorable because I literally don't remember anything about it, quite honestly. So I am going to get rid of this because I just don't think it's one I'm ever going to reach for again. So hopefully, you know, there'll be someone out there who loves this and will give it a better home than I am giving it. I then have some books that are actually leftovers from my university days. I have this, which some of these are quite expensive to get hold of, unfortunately, but this is actually an ex-library book over anyway. Funnily enough, it's from Hollyoake Public Library, which I'm pretty sure this was imported from America, and it's Understanding Manga and Anime, and I bought this because my dissertation that I was doing for my master's degree was to do with how graphic novels and manga were like being promoted and the circulation of them within libraries, public libraries, sorry, even in the UK. So I bought a whole bunch of books that were kind of to do with both libraries using graphic novels and manga and some general reference stuff as well. And this was one of the ones that was just general reference, and honestly, it's just fine. It's kind of just something that explains a lot about what manga is. It kind of like gives a history of it. It lists a whole bunch of series, but I don't need to know that because I already know this. So this just has no practical use for me anymore because there's nothing new it's telling me. I think I held on to it for quite a while because I still want to work doing this kind of thing within library, so I kind of held on to it. More because I thought it would be something that if other librarians I was working with didn't understand, I could like lend them this and be like, you know, here's some information. But I don't need to hold on to it for that reason. So I'm going to get rid of it. I might try and sell this on because it's still in really good condition and I think I did pay a lot for it. So yeah, that is one I'm not holding on to. I have a couple of non-fiction books as well, which are just ones that they've had their time on my shelves. I'm not really a big non-fiction reader, so I'm not going to reread these, quite honestly. I think I kept them for a while because I liked them and I was like, I might reread them, but honestly, all these books are ones I've read over 5 years ago, longer in some case, and at this point, I'm not going to reread them. So first we have Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High, which is by a whole bunch of authors, and I remember really liking this. I remember it being really informative at the time, but again, I don't think I need it anymore. I don't think it's going to tell me anything new, so getting rid of that one. I've also got You and Your Gender Identity by Dara Hoffman Fox. This was something that I read back when I was first kind of coming into myself as being non-binary, and I found it really useful back then. I think I've even like scribbled through it because I was like, there's like quizzes and stuff that you can like fill in. But again, I'm much more comfortable with my identity now. This isn't something I need anymore. This isn't something that I need to discover so much about myself anymore, so I just don't need this. Then we've got Becoming a Writer by Dorothea Brand. Again, this was fine. I remember liking it. I thought it was good, but I think now it's probably quite outdated. This was written in like the 1930s or something, and it's quite short. It's got really weird font, to be honest. And honestly, this is a book that if I ever want to reread it, I can probably find this in a library. So I don't need to be holding on to it when I know I'm not reading it. So that one is going. I also have my last non-fiction, a collection of essays which are all about video games. This was something that I was doing a whole like essay thing about back in when I was doing my undergraduate, and I did a lot to do with gender and gaming. So I picked up this really interesting book which is called The State of Play, and it has essays from loads of different people, and basically it's all just about essays and critiques of video games and culture and that kind of thing. And there's a lot of really interesting stuff to do with like women in gaming and that kind of thing, but again, I don't think it's something that I'm gonna reach for anymore. I kept it for so long because I thought it was something I would pick up and reread, and I just don't think I am. So it was interesting, but honestly, I'm not probably going to reread it, so it goes. And then finally, in the list of books that I'm getting rid of that are just like books that I don't think I want anymore, probably not a surprise if you've read some of my reviews, but I am going to get rid of Cassandra Clare's Swordcatcher. This is the Illumicrate edition, so it's got these like really nice sprayed edges. It's got like end papers, it's like really nice inside. It's an absolutely gorgeous book, and I almost was going to hold on to it for these end papers because they're glorious. But if I'm being honest, I didn't like this book. I don't think I'm going to reread it. I'd rather someone else has it who will actually enjoy it. So this is one I'm going to sell on because it is in perfect condition basically. I read it once, I never took it out anywhere. It is as perfect as you can get for someone who's read it once basically. So I am going to put this on my Vinted because I do want to try and make some money back from this because it is a special edition. So if anyone's interested at all, I put the link to my Vinted down in the description below. And I also have some other stuff on there that's like subscription box merchandise and stuff, so if that's of any interest to you at all, feel free to take a look. So those are the bunch of books that are in fairly good condition but that I'm going to be letting go of. Next, I have a whole batch of books that have the exact same reason for why I'm getting rid of them. So these books here are a whole bunch of classics, and I'm getting rid of them not because I dislike them. These are all classics I really like, but these are classics I've had on my shelves for a very long time. A lot of them date back from university, and not to be shallow, but they're really ugly. So a lot of these, some of them, to be honest, most of these I want to rebuy, and I want to rebuy them in nicer editions. I've got my eye on a specific set of classics which are absolutely gorgeous and I want them so bad. So my plan for these is that I am going to rebuy a lot of them, and a lot of these other ones, they're open source domain at this point. And if they're ones I want to reread, I kind of have them available to me, you know, via Audible because it's open source now, or I can just take them out from the library. So, and they're not ones I reread very often. So I'll go through them and I'll tell you which ones are which, but basically that is the reason why, is that I'm getting rid of these, not because I don't like them, but just because I want to get nicer versions because I like them so much. And these like really old, a lot of them are so old, like some of them are kind of like falling apart, that kind of thing. Some of them are from university, so I've like highlighted them, I've scribbled in them. And the issue with a lot of these ones here that are like the black and white versions, they are the Collins Classics. The font is tiny in them and I just can't deal with that. I realise now, like I was looking through some of them and I was like, oh, I should keep them because, you know, I like them, I've liked these stories. And then I looked through them and I was like, I don't think I can read these anymore. The font is so tiny, so for some of them I need to get new copies so I can actually read them because I cannot deal with the copies that I already have. So of those, I'm getting rid of my copy of Dracula. This is one of my favourite Gothic novels of all time. I absolutely love this, but this is like a very tired old edition. I'm fairly sure this is one I've scribbled in. It isn't actually, but I've got my eye on a really nice edition of this, and that is what I want to have instead rather than this kind of like sad looking edition. So this one is gonna go. In fact, I'm probably gonna pass this on to a friend of mine who's been wanting to read this for ages and never gets round to it, so I'm probably gonna pass it on to her to read. I'm also getting rid of The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. This is just a series of random adventures, and I have the whole collection of them via Audible, so I don't need this like random volume. And if I am going to buy Sherlock Holmes again, I'm going to buy like a book that is all of the stories together rather than this one which is like a bunch of short stories. Again, the font is just not great. The issue of these is that they're just really tiny and I find that hard to read. I have two H. Rider Haggard books. I have this ancient version of She, which was from university because we read it as part of that. And I don't think this is bad. I don't remember it, and again, the font is dire. And I think if I'm gonna reread this, I'm just gonna get it out from the library, quite honestly. I don't need my own copy. Same for King Solomon's Mine. I've got this really random, this is actually a double-sided book, and it contains The Vampire by John William Polidori, and then on the other flip side, it's got Carmilla by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu, and I want my own copies of these books. And basically this was a free book that was given away in an SFX magazine, which is so random, but it's not great quality. It's absolutely tiny font, and I want my own version of Carmilla, quite honestly, so I'm just going to pass this on. It's an interesting little curiosity of a book, I think that's why I kept it for so long. Same vein, Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I want a nicer version of this. It's got, again, like, you can see the horrible stickers that I got. This was apparently $1.99 back in the day from the works. So yeah, a lot of these were like really cheap classics that I got at the time because I didn't have very much money. And that's totally fine, but again, I want my own versions that are nicer now. So, A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, The Great Gatsby, Little Women, definitely going to be rebuying this one. I'm going to be rebuying most of these, to be honest. And finally, what is actually my favourite Gothic novel of all time, Frankenstein. And I have a lot of nostalgia for this particular volume. The font is actually okay in it, but like you can see that this was my university copy. I actually studied Frankenstein twice throughout my years because we studied it at college. And then I went to university and we studied Gothic novels, so I studied it again. And thankfully I love this book, so I didn't mind. But this has been through the ringer. This has been the book that I studied with for so long. It's got underlinings everywhere. It's got me scribbling annotations and highlighting. And I'm not a fan of that in my books. Some people are really into annotating and stuff, but it's not something I've ever really got into. So for me, this is just like a university text that is super battered. I love this book so much that I really want to get a special edition of it. So those are books that I'm getting rid of because I want new, nicer versions, basically. Or they're books that I just know I can take out from the library instead. So the last stack of books are actually duplicates. So that is the only reason why I'm getting rid of them. I just don't need two copies. Of those, I have Good Omens, which is a really old charity shop edition that I got way back. It was how I first read Good Omens. Text isn't great, it's quite tiny. But again, I have a nicer, newer edition of this now, and I don't need two copies of Good Omens realistically. So I'm going to pass this on. I also have a really old version of The Tale of the Body Thief by Anne Rice, and I have a hardback edition of this now that I managed to find, also in a charity shop, funnily enough. And this was a charity shop find too, and I really love this book, but also I don't need two copies, and quite honestly, this cover does not scream Anne Rice to me, so it's going. And then finally, I have a whole bunch of manga, which are duplicates. So this one was an accidental duplicate. This is the first volume of The Grey Man. I just don't need two copies. And then these ones are a couple of volumes in the Tsubasa series. And I basically bought the whole series off a friend of mine, and I already had a couple already. So these are the duplicates of the ones I already had, and I just don't need them, so I'm going to pass them on. These aren't in the best of condition, to be honest. I think number 1 is quite water damaged, but I have volumes 1, 2, 3, 4 and 10 randomly. Yeah, that is the 30 plus books that I'm unhauling. I'm pretty happy to be getting rid of this stack, like just alone. I can't hold them up because there's so many, but it's like a whole shelf essentially, and I'd rather just have books that I know I'm going to reread on my shelf than these books. So yeah, that is it. Those are all the books I'm unhauling. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you again in another video. Stay safe, stay cozy, and I'll see you next time. Bye!